Everybody, again, morning. Good to see you. Good to be with you. Those of you joining online, thanks for being a part of today, wherever it is that you're joining from. Here's the reality. Maybe you kind of just were scrolling through something and found it, and you stopped, and it's just good to be with you through the method of online. For those of you joining from other places outside of the West Michigan area, places like the metropolis of Marion, Indiana, or in Tennessee, or our friends in Washington, thanks a lot for being a part of today. And as we continue to kind of navigate this journey through this series on relationships, we're saying, hey, what does it look like? Like, if we could just have some real honest conversations, what does it look like to say, okay, how do we kind of get some momentum back or get positive direction going inside of our most important relationships? And specifically, we're looking inside the context of marriage, but I just want to tell you that lots of what we talk about, it can be easily expressed and applied in all sorts of relationships. And especially what we're going to talk about today, it can be applied in friendships. It's already being applied, whether you know it or not, inside of parent-child relationships, sibling relationships, all those kind of dynamics. And so we're just gonna have a lot of fun and navigating this through. And I just want to give you a little recap on why we're doing this series. So we do series on marriage and or family or whatever every 18, 24 months, something like that. And this one came a little quicker after our last one, in large part because we've just kind of come to grips with the reality that probably more so than ever, we have just an extremely high volume of marriages that are really struggling and like really, really significant potholes being hit. And so we just said, boy, let's just pause again and let's talk about this, and let's be honest with one another that it's hard and that it's maybe it's not working great, and it's okay just to acknowledge that. And so I want to say to you again, we might say this to you every week, I want to say to you again, if you're here or joining online and you say, boy, I just want to raise my hand, I want to wave both hands, that my marriage or a significant relationship that I'm in is just, it's not good. It's really bad, and we're maybe grasping for final straws. I just want to say to you, you're not alone, and there's no shame in that. There's no embarrassment in that. You're not alone in any way. There's lots and lots and lots and lots of people in it, and we just want to be honest about it so that we can actually address it with some real things. And today, we're going to address one topic that really is a major player in either marital or relationship brokenness and dysfunction, or a key to marriage or relationship success in winning. In fact, it's one of two topics that if we played out all of what look like marriage and relationship challenges, if we put them all on a spectrum somewhere and we said, boy, man, that's a lot of things, there are two things that contribute to almost all. So if there's 100 problems that feel big and huge, there are two things that are really at the root of almost all of them. Just over and over and over and over and over again, these are the themes that come up inside of marriage. We're going to talk about one today. We're going to talk about one next week. And actually, today, and some of you have already asked about this, and I know there's like mass disappointment because we talked about it. We didn't keep it a secret or anything, but the original plan today was that Erica and I were going to be in Middleville, and we were going to do this at our Middleville location. And Derek, our Middleville location pastor, and his wife, Tina, were going to be here talking about the second deal, okay? But we made a really last-minute switch. Friday night, early Saturday morning, Tina's mom passed away. And so we kind of talked about, okay, what makes this thing work best? And it just felt a little better for them to be kind of in the location that is home to them and just take that one step easier. So you'll get to hear from them next week. So it's the same deal, but we'll just flip it. And they're going to talk about the second kind of piece of this dynamic. So to help us get started, we're going to go back to where we began, and we're going to navigate this thing. And let me just say this. If you've got a Bible or something, you want to turn to Ephesians chapter 5, that's cool, because that's where we're going to land for a little bit. And we're going to really spring out of one line that if we would follow it, it'd change our whole life. Like, literally would change everything. It'd change every relationship. It'd change marriage. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. And as you get there, let me just say this. So Eric and I, we do this like maybe it's once a year, once every 2 years or something, and that's about all we do it. Maybe we should do it more, maybe we should do it less. We have no idea. There's no science to it. We just do. And so today we'll have some fun with it, and I'm just gonna tell you, like, it's gonna be pretty conversational, pretty relational. We don't have a perfectly like scripted out thing or whatever. We're just gonna talk to you, and we'll talk a little bit from our own experience, and I'll tell you in a little bit why it's so valuable to us, even after almost 26 years of being married and all that kind of stuff. But Ephesians chapter 5, we're gonna look at one line that I just again tell you, if you just grab a hold of this changed everything about your life. This would. When we talk about more life for more people, lots of it starts in phrases and sentences like this, written by a guy named Paul, early follower of Jesus, after being an early persecutor of Jesus' followers. And this way he says, Eric's going to read this out for us and get us going. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 21. Good to be with you, babe.
You too.
We've barely seen each other in the last 36 hours either, so it's kind of like, hey, welcome. Like, if we can just have a minute to catch up, and then we'll jump back in. But she's going to lead us out here, this passage, Ephesians chapter 5, verse 21.
He thinks I'm going to just start reading the verse, but I got to say something first, okay? You guys, if you...
I married an extrovert. Do you know?
If you were... I know, I was like, come on. When's my turn? No, I'm just kidding.
No, I get it, yeah.
If you guys were here last week, you know Ephesians 5:21 starts with the word submit. So he's like, hey, babe, I want you to preach with me on this day, and I want you to start by reading this verse. Submit. I was like, really?
I want you to start we're all going to start in the deep end. Yeah.
So anyway, go on your phone, in your Bible. It'll be on the screen too if you don't have anything with you, and that's fine. Ephesians 5:21, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And I was thinking about this verse, and I was thinking, I do kind of struggle with that sometimes. We're 26 years in, and John's a great guy, and I still sometimes struggle with the submit. But it also talks about one another. So not just your husband if you're married, not just if you're in a relationship, but one another. So friends, family, parents. But I also got to the part where it says out of reverence for Christ, and I thought, okay, what is my motive for submitting? What is my motive for showing love to John? What is it? Because I want accolades? Is it because I want him to be like, I want a pat on the back? Or is it because it's out of reverence for Christ? Do I love others because I'm loving Christ by loving them? So I think that's one of the big things for me that came out of that verse. One of the ways that we submit to one another shows up in lots of different avenues in our lives. And one way that we're going to talk about today is love languages. And we're going to explain all of those and get to them and everything. But sometimes you and your spouse or significant other or brother and sister or mom and dad, you're speaking a different language. And there's problems when you are speaking a different language, right? I'd like to tell you guys a story. Most of you know I'm a sign language interpreter. It's what I do. And my amazing friend Catherine here is interpreting today for my awesome friend Nancy. But that's what I do. That's my job. And when I started out 20 years ago, I was interpreting at a high school. And it was my first year interpreting, straight out of college. I was very green, and I'm interpreting for these two guys who are football players. They're on the football team, and we're at a practice. And I wanted to sign that the coach the whistle had happened, right? So this is a sign for whistle. But being fresh and green that I was, I signed this. And everybody knows what that means. So the boys started giggling and laughing and looking at each other and like that interpreter. Oh my gosh, and I was like, what? Okay, so they told me what my mistake was, and of course I was super embarrassed. But at that moment, I thought I was speaking their language, and I wasn't. So we were not communicating.
And I just want to be known, she wasn't encouraging them to smoke weed either. Literally, it was just an attempt to get them back to the huddle.
They were probably what? The coach said we're going to the locker room and it's time for this?
No.
This is the best school ever.
Best football team ever, yeah.
I was like, no.
No, but we have them, right? I mean, there's those moments we don't get the language right. Like I've talked before about first time I was in Romania. I think it was in the summer of 2002, and we were there, and I'd spoken in this little church in this little village in Romania that we were staying in for a while. And the customary thing was, hey, after you do that, you stand at the back, and while everybody's leaving, you just give them a greeting. And so they just said, here, just give them the greeting in pace. Pace just means peace. Just give them the greeting. That's all you got to say. Just smile and say pace. And they're going to say a lot of nice things to you. Just smile and say pace. And so I did it, and I did it with I was like, okay, one word. I can do that. And so I stood back there for the 15 minutes or so while everybody's leaving, and just over and over, porche. I stuck an R in there. And when I stuck the R in there, it went from giving everybody peace to calling everybody pig. And so it's it's so subtle, right? I mean, it's one letter. It's one letter that can ruin so many things. And so, language really matters, right? Whether it's another language, completely different language, verbal language, or whether it's body language or facial expressions, or also the way we communicate love. And part of this thing of Ephesians 5:21, part of how we submit to one another is we learn how to communicate with one another. Instead of always trying to get somebody to know how to communicate with us, part of our way of submitting to one another is we learn how to communicate to other people, including our spouse and things like that. And again, 26 years in, for us, this is still really significant. And it is part of our ongoing conversation. It's part of sometimes something we have to check in on. And you'll see why in a minute, why we have to check in on it so often, but it's part of the deal. And I'll just say to you, we're not going to talk about this much today, but it's also a significant piece of parenting, understanding what your kid's love language is. And students, as you get older, it's a really significant part of how you love your parent back. You learn their love language. So we'll just talk about them a little bit. We've kind of touched on these in passing over the years. Today we're going to do a little deeper dive and be a little more pragmatic with it. But let me just show you mine. So here's my love languages, right? And I took the test again, the quiz again. It's like a 7-minute quiz. It was really easy. It's fast take. But here's mine, words of affirmation. And so words of affirmation, that just means what it sounds like, words of affirmation. When somebody speaks something to me that's affirming or a confidence builder or an encouragement, somebody putting courage in, or just applauding or cheer, whatever it is, that matters to me. It sometimes it's in written form, sometimes it's in verbal form, sometimes it's in text form, but the right affirming words. And here's the thing: if words of affirmation is primary love language, which it is for me, tokenism doesn't work, right? When you have your love language, there's something about it, you just intuitively know when it's overly forced or fake, right? You just kind of know. You're just stop, okay? But that really, really matters to me. Second thing is acts of service. And acts of service is just really what it sounds like too. It's when people do a very simple thing. So when Erica does what could feel like a very simple nothingness thing that makes something one step easier for me, or lets me not have to think about something, or it can be the smallest thing ever. It can be moving something for me that needs to be moved. It can be completing a task for something. It can be filling something out for me. I mean, it can feel like the most minor thing, but it's such a filler of a love tank when that's your primary love language, and it's one of my top 2. So it's really, really significant for us. And then physical touch. Which it just how is there's questions on there about when you value a hug and how you might want to express public displays of affection, and all of that is part of it. And that's kind of middle of the road for me, how that stuff matters. And we had a funny conversation. I said, I think I answered yes to every question that was about a hug, what's really funny about that is I grew up in a family that didn't hug very much. I mean, it just wasn't their thing. They conveyed love, but that wasn't our collective love language. And somehow over time, I think Erica's family brainwashed me, but I became like that. I became it was because all of them are extreme in that, right? I mean, just extreme. And so it's okay, that's a unique piece of the puzzle there. And so we have to figure out, what does that mean? And when do we value it? And when do I value it? And how does all of that play out? Next one is quality time. And quality time is really just sometimes the value of presence matters more to some people than others. I really value being with people. I really value being with my family, but it's not always the primary way that I would hear them saying, I love you, okay? Like, it would actually be more their words of, hey, John, I want to spend time with you. The word is what would be affirming, right? And so if we had if we had all the time but no word, it would miss a little bit. Right? You see, because words of affirmation is so much higher for me. But it's just quality time. It's just being in the presence. It doesn't always have to involve in-depth and meaningful conversation. Just as a little bit of sidebar, one of our girls, Mackenzie, that's one of her dominant ones. Like, and in fact, sometimes you ruin it if you talk. She would rather you not talk, right? And so you just kind of hang in, and you're just there, and you have presence, and that just is what it's quality time that like probably took you something. It took a little bit of sacrifice. It took a little bit of energy. It might have been doing something you don't love. That's the submit to one another. Like, how do you want to spend the quality time, right? So that's part of how we navigate, a little bit lower. And then really low on mine, which I was actually surprised by this, but it's receiving gifts. And so receiving gifts is not just the big like Christmas birthday thing. It's just the little gifts along the way. It's the little gifts in a very routine, in ordinary week, like things that just don't feel like a big deal. It's a $5 thing here, a $1 thing here, a free thing here that took some effort, but showed thoughtfulness. It showed intent. It showed I was actually thinking about you, and I wanted to convey that value to you. So those are like mini descriptions of the 5 languages, and you can see just mine in order. And I told you this is really significant for us. And this is where a lot of people get caught. Honestly, they're communicating things and to each other in other languages, and it's so easy to do, right? It's so easy to do. Part of the reason it's really helpful for us, as you're going to see here in a second, Erica's going to show you hers, and you're going to notice some things right off the bat, okay? Like, just brace yourself, right?
Yeah, okay, so put mine up there, Ethan, and yeah, just look at that for a second.
Y'all notice any challenges? I mean, seriously.
So my first love language is John's last love language, and his second top love language is my last love language. Yay! It's been so fun. So as you can see, and some of ours kind of equal out there in the quality time, and I mean, we do spend time together. I'm like, John, if you look at that list, it's like we're never together, but we do.
Yeah, but here's the thing we were talking about, right? If you have a marriage and somebody has quality time, or both of you have quality time, you're one of those couples you feel like you need to be together every waking moment. Okay? And if you don't have that, you laugh at those couples. Okay, right? But if you have that, you look at the rest of us and think, man, how do you guys not spend hours together every single day? Like, you got to know what it is. So we do spend time together. We do, right? But it's like she loves movies, so she goes to the movies. It's like, whatever, I don't care. Go to the movies, and I like to golf, and so if I golf, like, she's never made me feel guilty for golfing or whatever. Why? Because we don't need like 9 hours together every single day, okay, right? And yet, but some people do, based on where their love language is. So yeah.
Yeah. So John kind of talked about that positive aspects of the love languages and explaining those. And I just want to kind of go through how the absence of those, or if you don't see those in your life or spoken to you, kind of how it might be a negative impact on your life. So receiving gifts, because that one is so high for me, I know that if you miss a celebration, or if it's a thoughtless gift, if it's a gift that you could give to like any coworker. Like if you take it in a bin to work and you give it out to each of your coworkers, and I get one, like for Christmas from you, I'm like, oh, okay, thanks, that's really nice. So if it's thoughtless, so to me, I was telling, we were
just give it to me with a nice note with a word of affirmation. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. Yeah.
We were kind of talking through this, and I was like, I think what it is like, I love to shop. And when I'm out shopping, I I not only like look for myself, but I think of other people. So I'll be shopping and I'll be like, oh my gosh, so-and-so would love that, or, so-and-so would love this or whatever. And it's not that I always buy that item for the person. I might, but just the fact that I thought of them while I was out shopping, to me means if somebody is out shopping and they find a little gift for me, that means they were thinking of me while they were shopping, and that speaks love to me. And it is kind of funny because I will bring gifts home, like almost every time I go shopping, I bring something home for John. So, and I don't.
I have to be really intentional about it. And she said, I've missed some moments. Those moments, I've missed some of those.
Yeah. So that's it's pretty disastrous if it's a thoughtless gift or if it's a missed celebration. If
Disastrous?
Disastrous.
Oh.
Whew. Yeah.
I thought we were good right until about right then.
So the second one, physical touch. A person who their love language is physical touch. If there's neglect or the absence of touch, then it's really kind of destructive in the trust factor. I think, like for me, physical touch when we're out and about shows me that John is happy to be with me. He's proud that we're together. He loves that we're a couple. He wants everybody to know that I'm his. Like that's what that speaks to me, physical touch. And it doesn't have to be over the top, just, an arm or around the shoulders or a hand holding or whatever. Words of affirmation. So John really helped me understand what was kind of disastrous. That's a really strong word in this.
Yes, Lord.
But is the absence of like asking questions. So John is really good at asking really good questions. And I think as a family, we've gotten so used to that we'll be doing something and he'll ask these great questions and then we don't ask them back. And then later he's like, well, don't you want to know how I feel about it? I mean, it just happened the other day. We were at the Elevation Worship concert on Wednesday night, and it was amazing. And we're in the car heading home, stuck in the parking garage for half an hour. And John's like, what was most, like, which song spoke to you the most, or which song did you enjoy the most? And we all shared, and I think I was just kind of expecting him to share, but none of us asked which was your favorite. And I didn't even think anything of it. And then like 2 days, like yesterday, he's like, yeah, nobody asked me. But so to him, he didn't feel loved in that moment. Like he didn't feel our love for him, even though we do, and we were having a great conversation and affirming each other. It wasn't like a negative conversation in and of itself. But because we didn't ask him back the great question that he had asked, he didn't feel that love.
So I made a small book of questions and gave it to her as a gift. So no, I didn't really do that. It wasn't for it. Yeah. It's a good idea, though, isn't it? That's a good idea. I'll work on that this afternoon.
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
And then, so quality time, I think really for that one, a lot of it is more like presence and just the lack of, if you are a person that you hear love through quality time, even just someone being present with you completely without a phone on or without anything else going on in the room, and just that like intent listening and being together. And if that doesn't happen, then that fully being present is really hurtful to them. And then acts of service, and I really know what's destructive with this because John and I have struggled with the back and forth on this one. But I think that if someone you're not doing acts of service for someone who hears that love language, they think that you're lazy, that you break commitments, that you're making more work for them. And there's a lot of times where John has said, like, okay, we're all going to help in the yard. And, and I've always thought, okay, he's just trying to, fill the girls with a little work ethic, I mean, they're teenagers. They got to do some yard work. And then I think about it more and I'm like, oh, no. To him, us going out in the yard and helping around the yard and making it, quick and easy for him is speaking his love language, is saying, we love you, we're helping with the yard, you don't have to do it alone, we're not being lazy, we're not making more work for you. So, yeah, it's that kind of understanding that it's not just like, I'm going to get you guys to do all this work around the house. It's like, this is how you're going to show me that you love me.
And acts of service speak loudest in the things that somebody hates to do, and I hate doing yard work. So it's like,
Right,
like rally
right.
people to the thing that
Yeah.
you hate. Yeah.
And the other day, and even just us doing this teaching together today has kind of reminded me of what his love languages are. And the other day, I was like, I'm going to do something for him. He likes organic butter. I don't. It's super expensive. Does it taste that expensive? Like, is it that much better?
So it tastes
anyway,
it makes me feel rich.
Okay.
Yeah, so I ate it, pretty much.
So we have organic butter for John, regular for the rest of the family because it's too expensive. And he's got this little thing that says organic on the side, and it was empty, and it had been sitting by the toaster for like 3 days, and it needed to be filled up. And so I was like, I am going to do an act of service for him. He's going to love it. He's going to feel so loved and so happy. So I went all the way down to the basement where the freezer is, got it out, put it in there, put it away. He comes home from work. He has like a little snack. A lot of times his snack is a piece of toast. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. But so I'm like, thinking in my head, I'm like, he's got butter in his dish now. He's going to be like, thanks, babe. That was amazing. That act of service. Nothing. And we go on, and like the next day, and then I come into the fridge the next morning, and there's another box of organic butter in there along with the one that I had put in there. So he didn't notice. He went and got his own butter and I was like, didn't you notice that I put your butter in the fridge? And he hadn't noticed. But
I didn't have butter on that piece of toast. I mean, let's have a little bit, right? I mean, that
who
one
eats
piece
toast without butter? But so what God just really reminded me in that moment, he was like, Erica, why did you do it? And it's going back to the Ephesians 5:21. Did you do it out of reverence and love for me and also for my husband? But did you do it so that he would pat you on the back and say, great job, you spoke my language. Yay, Erica, a check in the marriage list. And I was like, oh, Lord, you're right. Why did I do it? And I had not done it for the right reasons. And I just had to apologize to John and to the Lord, and just to be reminded that, I'm speaking his love language, doing acts of service because it's out of reverence for the Lord, and it's love for the Lord. And it's not so that he notices and gives me a pat on the back, but it's so that he feels loved, and I want him to feel loved. So, and so it's just really important that we speak each other's love language for a couple of reasons. There's lots and lots of reasons, but we just kind of put 2 as the most important. It really promotes selflessness, and that kind of goes with what I was just saying. Like, it just reminds you, it puts you in their shoes, and not in your own shoes always. It just puts you in their perspective. It gets you out of your own mind, out of your own self, and just to remember what you're doing for them and showing them love. So you're really being selfless through it. And also, it protects your momentum in your marriage. A lot of times, marriages can become kind of flat, and there's no connection. There might not be, like, hatred, but there's just this kind of like blah feeling. And when you get to where you are speaking each other's love language, you're really making a connection to the other person, and you're keeping each other's love tank full. And when you both have a full tank of love, then it really promotes and protects momentum in your marriage.
I do want to say thank you for the butter. And the pat on the back to go ahead. Yeah, I know. Too late. So, and here's the thing, here's the question you get, if you think about the love languages, and especially if you have any variance, I mean, we have an extreme variance in some of those, but if you have any variance, the question really could become, if we're honest, the question really can become, why can't I just speak my own? Why can't I speak my own? Why can't somebody learn to hear mine? And that's really magnified, again, in current culture. Last week, to start the series, we talked about the gradual drift of culture. Well, what's magnified in our culture right now, and is drifting pretty hard and fast, is is you learn to hear everything about me, the way I speak, the way I write. And if you won't, then you don't let me. So I want to speak in my own way. And here's the reality, you can. And we should be okay speaking in all 5 of these languages. Right? That's part of it. But here's the dynamic. The same guy, Paul, who wrote Ephesians, in another letter he wrote this really simple but profound truth where he said this, like, there are lots of things that are permissible, but not everything is beneficial. There's lots of things that are, can you speak all 5 and can you predominantly speak out of your own? Absolutely. Is it wrong? Nope. It's not wrong. But the question becomes, is it beneficial? Everything that might fit in the category of okay does not fit in the category of wise. Okay, let me just say it again, because this is huge for relationships. Everything that fits in the category of okay may not fit in the category of wise. I didn't do anything wrong. Probably true. Probably true. But did you do the best thing? I didn't say anything that was wrong. It wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't that big of an event. Probably true. But is the way you took, was it beneficial? Do you see the subtle distinction? And do you see the profound impact Paul's words could have on our relationships? Like, let's look for the wise and the beneficial thing. The beneficial thing for our marriage, the beneficial thing for your marriage or your parenting or your friendships, whatever, is to learn to speak other people's language. Learn to speak other people's love languages. And at the same time, acknowledge that it's really hard. Again, Eric and I have been 26 years at this thing, and even this week, like, just highlighting again for ourselves to get ready for this, it's like, it's still challenging. It's still like, it's not necessarily easy all the time. And there's a couple reasons. Number one, it's not native to us. Whatever your primary language or 2 is, the other ones are not native to you. They're not what you speak easily and fluently, right? Like, I learned a few Romanian words the first time I went to Romania, but that was not fluent. I was never going to be fluent in that, right? And I could just get it off by one letter, and it changed everything. Why? Because I was raised in a place where I was taught to speak English, right? Well, you have a natural inclination to a predominant love language or 2, and you speak those without even thinking, honestly. And when we speak those without even thinking, it's what we most naturally hear without thinking. We want everybody else to speak in that language back to us. And if they don't, we don't understand what they're saying. Much like, again, like I didn't understand all the words that people in Romania were saying. People don't understand necessarily the language you're speaking if it's not their love language. So it's okay just to acknowledge, like, it's okay for Erica and I to say, like, it's okay for her to say acts of service or words of affirmation. It's not my predominant thing. It's okay for me to say, let's just be honest, like gifts, that's not my most natural thing. So that presents a challenge at the very beginning. And can I tell you, when the euphoria of a relationship wears off, you got to know this. You just got to know it, right? We got, and to understand and be okay, acknowledge this isn't it. This next one's a little bit longer, but let me just give you the whole phrase. Like, even with love languages, even with same love languages, we come with very different stories. Even with different love, we come with very different. So just an example. Eric and I, we're not super high on quality time, neither one of us, but the times we value, we really value. And we actually both came from families and very different expressions that valued eating meals together around a table. Okay, now it looked radically different. Okay, with my family around the table, there was only 3 of us, and it was like one person at a time conversation. It was a little more quiet, and it was at the same time every day. I mean, literally, like set a WAP, same time every day. Like, okay. Erica, 4 people in her family, but most of them are way louder. None of them know how to whisper. I mean, it's just a different dynamic. Okay, it just is, right? And they might have been talking over each other. They ate whenever they could eat. The schedules were full, and if that altered the time, it was no big deal. Like that, you just went with the flow or whatever, right? So we get together and we both share this lower quality time thing, but we both share this ideal, like we want to have meals together, but it looks completely different. So we're like 6 months into this thing, and I'm like, man, why are we never eating at this time? And I'm trying to help, and I'm trying to encourage, and I'm trying to say, and I'm even trying to get it ready, but it's like, oh, whenever, and what, okay, and it's just driving me batty, right? It's driving me batty. But here's why it's driving me batty. It's because we actually have that love language at the same level of priority, but the expression of it's not the same. So we had to have conversations even about the expression of it. And then that happened again when we had kids, and then it happened again when our kids got older, and it happened again when they got older again, right? It's probably going to happen again when our kids move away, right? All of these dynamics keep changing. So we had the same value, but very different stories that we brought to the table, which impacted the expression. And here's the thing, friends, you can know these love languages. You can know them, and some of you know them. Some of you have read the book, you've taken the quiz, the whatever. The question is, are we on occasion evaluating how we're speaking them? Because part of what we bump into with lots of marriage struggles, part of what we bump into is we have a more external issue. It's an issue around money, or it's an issue around a calendar, or it's an issue around where somebody's going to live. It's an issue around one unique conflict. It's an issue around sex inside of marriage. It's an issue around future, whatever that is. It's out here, right? But when you dig in, there's often one of two challenges, and one of them is love languages. We're trying to have conversation. We're trying to navigate issues, but our love tanks are so empty when we get to the issue because we haven't been speaking the right love language. We don't know the right love language to speak. Problem solving as a husband and wife with low love tanks is really hard. It's really hard. You give yourself a better chance of catching conflict early and navigating it well when love tanks are full. And how do love tanks get full? They get full by us speaking the right language. So it doesn't really, again, 26 years, it doesn't matter how long you've been married. It's worth just revisiting this thing. Sometimes we have decades. Listen to me. Please hear me on this. Sometimes we have decades of low-level conflict and disappointment, and its root is all the way back in this thing of love languages. We're just not speaking the right language. We have all the best intentions in the world. We're not speaking the right language. If you're young and you're thinking one day about getting married, or if you're middle-aged and one day thinking about getting married or remarried or whatever that is, I just challenge you to discover now, what are your love languages? How do you hear people who love you back? How do you hear it? How do you absorb it? Have a conversation with your parent. Have a conversation with your best friend. Have a conversation with the person that you think you're going to marry. It's never too early to start. It's never too early to start absorbing it. If you've been married decades, I dare you to have this conversation. I dare you. I dare you. And if you need to call a counselor after you've had it, do it. It's worth it. It's worth it. So let me help us just take a next step here. Okay, I want to just go one place, and even if you've done this before, Eric and I have done this countless times. Even if you've done it before, we've had our girls do it countless times. Take this quiz. I'm going to show you where you can get the quiz. Okay, just go to the 5 Love Languages website, and you'll find the quiz. And there's all sorts of other quizzes there too, like how best do you hear an apology? You understand? Like there's more than one way to hear an apology. And sometimes you're apologized to, and you just don't hear that. It's because it didn't come in the right form. So there's all sorts of things there. So take the quiz and ask 2 questions. Here's the 2 questions. Let me share the 2 questions with you. First one is this: where do you see my effort to communicate love, even if it hasn't been in the language you primarily hear? So sometimes I'm speaking all these words of affirmation to Erica, and at the end of the day, she's not really hearing them. It's not registering the right way, right? Or she's giving me a gift. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. Neat, thanks. She's like, man, that was so loving, right? And we just need to acknowledge it on occasion. While our spouse or our friend or the person we're dating or our parent or our child is learning to speak our language, let's acknowledge the effort that is there. Let's acknowledge the effort is that while we're learning to speak a new language. Language takes time. Language takes time, right? There's no Rosetta Stone for this thing, friends. This takes time. Okay.
And don't hold a grudge when you do speak their language and they don't notice.
Amen.
Butter.
Yeah, butter.
Organic butter.
Don't hold a grudge when it's disastrous. We got to move on. Okay. Second one is this. Now we're getting to the real thing. How can I speak your language? How can I speak your language better, more clearly, and more frequently? How can I speak your language? Look, I'm just going to own it. On occasion, I just have to get tutored again on what gifts, because I'm all or nothing on gifts. It's big or it's nothing, right? Which isn't how you speak that language. That's not how you speak that language. I can't afford to speak that language. Okay, it's not how you speak that language. So it's okay to just say, man, listen. Part of how we submit to one another is to ask the humble question. How can I speak your language more, better, differently, more clearly? How can I do that for you? I'm not just going to tell you I love you. I'm going to go to school on how to speak your language. Will you help me with that? And then be a really kind teacher. Grade easily, okay? Let's give each other a lot of grace in this thing. So take a quiz.
You get an A+ for being a me Starbucks on Tuesday.
Thank you. I don't even think it was the right drink, but I still got. See, that's how easy it is, right? I don't even think it's the right thing. A+. Just because you just got to go for it.
I drank
right?
it anyway.
Yeah. A+ for that act of service. Another pat on the back, right? You just got to take the quiz. Ask 2 questions. Take the quiz, ask 2 questions. No matter how long you've been married, no matter where you think you're at, if you want to take it with a best friend, just whatever, you want to take it with a parent, there's actually some help there on how to navigate it, parent-child relationship, family relationship, everything else. Just take the quiz, ask 2 questions. Next week, Derek and Tina will help lead us through the next phase of that, another significant piece in that.